as a support coach.
Good afternoon, Dr. Greene. My name is Michelle Spence. I'm a former educator. I'm now with an educational technology company and live here in Jacksonville.
Good afternoon, Dr. Greene. I'm Jay King. I'm the SAC chair at our local middle school, and I have two daughters that are in Duval County Public Schools, and my wife's a first grade teacher.
Hi, my name is Patty Miracle, and I'm a graduate of Duval County. I had 3 children who came through the schools, and I'm currently a kindergarten teacher for 16 years.
Good afternoon, Felita Tutt, Duval County Council PTA President.
Good afternoon, Dr. Greene. I'm Julia Menifee. I'm a CRT data entry clerk at Rutledge H. Pearson Elementary School.
Welcome, Dr. Greene. I'm Jenny Bird. I'm here on behalf of board member Scott Shine, and I'm a retired administrator from Miami-Dade County Public Schools.
Hi there, my name is Carrie Halligan, and I am a mom that has 4 kids in Duval County schools from elementary up to graduating senior this year. And I spend a lot of time volunteering in the schools.
Good afternoon. I am Tara Harold Jackson, educator at Robert E. Lee High School and SAC chair at Fort Caroline Middle School.
Good afternoon, Dr. Greene. I'm Latanya Mitchell, a 4th grade teacher at Pinedale Elementary School.
Dr. Greene, Terry's going to ask the first question, but before I forgot to say this, it was an hour, there's 15 questions. I'll give you a prompt to my question either not. We're ahead or behind. If there's plenty of time left at the end, I'll let you ask me a few questions, but understand that again, you stand between them and their cars. So,
and they stand between me and my car. So.
All right. Once again, welcome, Dr. Greene. The first part, I would like for you to introduce yourself to the group. And secondly, please describe why you have chosen and included the Duval County Public School District in your career plans. What aspects of our school district and our region have attracted you and brought you here or back here today?
This sounds really loud. Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Diana Greene, and I'm superintendent currently of the School District of Manatee County. I've been with Manatee County for 5 years. We serve over 49,000 students. I began my teaching career in Duval County many years ago. After I graduated from the University of North Florida, I was invited to a reception, and at that reception, someone said, "Hey, you need to come and visit someone out of HR," and they asked, what would you like to do? Where would you like to teach? And since I was only 19 years old, I just simply said, oh, I'll teach anywhere. And so I was assigned to Mamie Agnes Jones Elementary School as this position doesn't exist anymore, as a Chapter 1 teacher. Wow. One, I had no clue where was Mamie Agnes Jones. And 2, if they would have told me it was in Baldwin, I probably would have been a little more detailed in where I wanted to teach. However, that experience opened my eyes that children, whether they are children of poverty, they need a highly effective teacher. And I felt at that time I was not a highly effective teacher. I felt alone. I felt not in a place that I was being a great teacher for these children. And so from that, I decided that you constantly need to be a learner. You constantly need to find ways to reach all students. I clearly was not reaching those 1st and 2nd graders. And so that is what led me to go back to school and to engage more with my students. And so in the midst of that, I moved back home and started teaching in a Title I elementary school. And it was there that I learned how to be a better teacher. Each year I felt myself getting to be a better teacher. students, being able to address them where they are and move them to a higher level of learning. And then I decided, maybe this isn't the most impactful position. And so I wanted to be a principal because I wanted to impact more students. And through being a principal, I learned to be even a better teacher. I was able to coach my teachers in strategies that were going to be helpful and supportive to their students. And so from that point again, I decided I want to impact more. So I became the Director of Staff Development. And as the Director of Staff Development, I'm the person who created the Continuous Improvement Model training. And Jim Warford was the superintendent at that time, who then became the chancellor for the state of Florida. And through that experience, it was very evident that, you know what? The superintendent has a major role in impacting students. And I decided that I want to be a superintendent. And when I became superintendent in the school district of Manatee County, I was elated. I felt I've arrived. Mistakenly, that'll humble you really quick when you think you've arrived. The next, something will happen that will remind you you have not arrived. But Duval has always been on my radar because I will never forget my first year of teaching. It was not a successful year for me. It was not a positive experience in that I felt alone. And because I felt that way, I figured there has to be other teachers who feel that way. And so as a superintendent, I worked very hard to ensure that our schools have the resources they need, that they are supported by strong administrative teams, and Duval would just, for me, be the natural next step. It is coming at a time where I feel Manatee is able to stand on its own and that it is more than me, and now the community has embraced the school district, that they will take ownership of their school district. And so Duval is my ability to come home to the beginning of my professional career, home to an opportunity to make every first-year teacher feel like they're not alone. And so through this career path of mine, I believe every position I've had has prepared me to be your next superintendent.
Dr. Greene?
Yes.
What types of decisions or responsibilities do you delegate to others to include employees or outsourcing? And how do you monitor or manage accountability for performance of those who are responsible?
Well, in my school district, I have two deputy superintendents. I have a deputy superintendent for instruction and a deputy superintendent for operations. I fully engage them in every aspect of what we do in our school district. And the expectation I have for them is that they are empowered to make decisions. I'm not sure I ever delegate anything to anyone because I fully understand I'm responsible for everything. However, I pride myself in hiring people who are open to learning, people who have the work ethic to know that my expectation is not about what time we start work and what time we end work. It's about how do we get the work done. And we're going to do everything that it takes to get it done. I meet with my deputy superintendents every Monday morning. We talk about all the things that are on the docket for the week. We talk about everything that happened the week before, and we're always looking down the road to have that conversation. And then we go to the next level of cabinet. These are the executive directors or chiefs of the areas in those two divisions. And I go and I listen to them. I need to know what's happening in our schools. So my executive directors of the schools sit on cabinet because I need to be connected to what's happening in our classrooms and on our campuses. And so through that cabinet, we talk about the major initiatives we have going, how it impacts each department. We are implementing a new ERP system. That is the most painful thing that a school district can encounter, is implementing a new business package. Through cabinet, we talk about now, how does ERP impact teachers? How does ERP impact cafeteria workers? So for me to know how it impacts all the employee groups, I need all the directors sitting at the table giving me information. So for me as a leader, I empower my people who are in leadership positions to make decisions. I empower them to be risk takers, but we walk this path together. And so part of that level of communication is many times we try to over communicate. Even though we meet weekly, there's nothing for me to just get in my car, go down to where the director of food services and just ask a question, or go talk to my chief of transportation and figure out why are we having these issues on this particular route. So it's about empowerment, not delegation. It's about empowering them to do their job. If your responsibility is for K-12 curriculum, then I'm going to allow you to have that responsibility, but we're going to constantly be in communication of how we desire to accomplish. So every quarter we look at our benchmark data. During those meetings, everyone must give input as to what they're doing to impact that data. For Manatee, 40% of my students are Hispanic. So I have thousands of ELL students. And so for me, their progress is very important, that we are monitoring it and that we are putting in the right strategies to support those students. And therefore, we invite many people to the table to have that discussion, to make those decisions on how to move forward. And at the end of the year, we go back to see, did we meet all of our benchmarks that we set forward at the beginning of the year? If we did not meet it, what do we need to do differently to start meeting those benchmarks?
Dr. Greene, if you could please give us an example of how you've had to develop a shared vision and a preferred outcome with your board, key stakeholders, and then how you implemented that shared vision and what the outcomes were and what implications you see for that to have with respect to Duval County.
Well, a very specific example for the school district of Manatee County is we hired a company to come and evaluate all of our facilities to determine which facilities needed renovations, which facilities possibly it was more cost effective to close the facility and build a new school. And we involved we had members from the community, we had members from the business community. This 50-member committee met with this company to develop that plan. And so once that plan was developed, I met with the school board and we put in a shared vision of what we wanted to see accomplished within the next 5 years. The reason we needed to do that is because we were going out to our community for renewing a half-cent sales tax. And so with that plan, board members, the superintendent, we could easily go out to our community and share with them. In the next 5 years, we are scheduled to build 3 new schools, and here are the locations of these 3 schools. We are also scheduled to consolidate an elementary with a middle school, renovate that middle school, and create an IBK-8 magnet, and that we had plans to close 1 elementary school, and after closing that school, dispersing those students to the surrounding schools. Very ambitious. We had a number of workshops with the board members to ensure that we all were on the same page. We developed board member PowerPoints. So when they went out to talk to the Rotary Club, they could use their PowerPoint and make sure that they stay on point, that this is our shared goal. I had a PowerPoint. I went out to all of the communities that we were going to impact with either new schools, closing a school, or consolidating those schools. Here's the outcome. We closed Orange Ridge Elementary. Now all of the surrounding schools are at 80% or above capacity when most of those schools were below 50% capacity. We sold Orange Ridge Elementary School for $2 million to put back into our capital funds. We consolidated Wakeland Elementary and Johnson Middle School to become an IBK8, built a brand new wing. It is slated to open up in August. Today, we have started building on all 3 of our new schools. We have North River High School slated to open August 2019, Dr. Mona Jane Middle School slated to open August 2019, and now North County Middle School. So the outcome is plan was implemented, executed. Everything we said we would do is now either done or in the process of completion. We did not have one single parent complaint in any of the things that we were doing, and it was because of constant communication, constantly, whether it was me as a superintendent going out to that school explaining again, why are we doing this? Why do we have to do this? Or our board members having readily available to them the information to share with any community member. So to close a school of almost 800 students and not have one single parent complaint, in my opinion, was pretty phenomenal.
So you mentioned the half-cent sales tax increase. Has that been determined yet, or is that still?
Oh, I'm sorry. We passed it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, we passed a half-cent sales tax.
Good afternoon. My question, Doctor, is what has been the most difficult decision that you had to make with the governing board? What was your role in that, the role of the board, and how did you handle their decision?
One of the most difficult decisions that I've had to make is I had to demote an administrator for what I considered poor judgment. The administrator was a popular administrator. I had issues with the local NAACP as well as my board. They did not want me to demote this administrator. I met with each of the groups. I shared with them the very specific reasons why I needed to demote that administrator and what was the plan from that point forward. The NAACP eventually, don't know that they never agreed with the decision, but they understood the decision. The board supported me. Individual board members met with me. We had conversation, but the level of the act for me was at a point that I could not turn a blind eye, and demotion was the most appropriate action to take in that situation. And I was willing to stand on it.
Superintendent, my question has to do with legislation and lobbying. What experience do you have with lobbying state legislators or national for state funding for education, and also against some of those unfunded mandates?
Well, I'm very active in our FADS organization. That is the Organization for District Superintendents, and as well as School District of Manatee County is part of the Central Florida Coalition. And so I'm very active with that organization, as well as speaking to our local delegation. Senator Galvano is part of Manatee. Next year, he will be the Senate president. I have a relationship where I can call him up. I can literally speak to him. I'm very engaged with also our Senator Byrne Buchanan. So the people who are representing my district I've developed relationships with them, professional relationships that I can have conversations with them about. These are the things that are concerning us for Manatee. These are the issues of concern. I believe my work that I did with Senator Galvano is the reason under Senate Bill, I think it's 7026, Title I, and last year they made major changes to Title I. Those changes would have gravely impacted Manatee County. And this year, in this year's past legislation, they made changes so that we were still able to do district initiatives using Title I dollars. So it's a hard road, but I am an advocate of having the district's own lobbyists. I'm the superintendent. I'm not a lobbyist. I spend time working with our legislators, but the day-to-day operations of the school district can become very overwhelming if the superintendent is not fully engaged in what's happening in the school district. So I do spend time lobbying, but I am also just pushed for my board to consider hiring a lobbyist for the school district so that they are in Tallahassee a lot more often than I am.
Okay, Dr. Greene, how do you ensure that how do we ensure that we are being physically responsible with our financial resources, and how do we communicate that to our board and community stakeholders?
One way to ensure that you're being fiscally responsible is ensuring that our finances are transparent. We share with our board, and in my school district, I also have an audit committee of community members. They either have to have a CPA or have worked in senior leadership type positions. And we share with them every categorical, every dollar we receive, whether it's operating or capital. And we make sure that those meetings are open to the public. We post that information on our website. We continue to work with our principals and training them so that they can also be the voices out there in the community to understand how we are funded, what things we are allowed to do, what we are not allowed to do. Not many people understand the massive amounts of regulation that we have on our funding. Many people do not understand about the categoricals that we have on our funding. If you think about transportation, people just think, well, you get money to run transportation. No, it is not fully funded. In our district, it's only funded at 40%. We have to find the other 60% to pay for transportation. But nobody knows that if you're not telling them. So when we have our budget meetings, our board invites people that they choose to come to those meetings so that they can see how we receive our revenue, how we utilize our revenue, what are our expenditures, and we have to provide just cause for those expenditures. So we believe in zero-based budgeting in my school district, as well as what we call trend budgeting. So we look at the trend of how we've been spending, and we start from zero, and we try to meet in the middle so that we can easily explain it to someone. Why are we spending $25 million on transportation? And this is what is involved.
Dr. Greene, what has been the most unpopular decision you've had to make, and how did you handle the reaction to the decision?
I'm getting fearful because I keep talking about negative things. Are you gonna ask me to say something? What's been the most popular thing? The most unpopular. The most unpopular thing that especially if you speak to employees, was we completely revamped health insurance. The school district was getting close to paying $50 million in health insurance, and it was becoming overwhelming to our budget. It's one thing to get out of financial ruins to get back to a stable budget, but it's another thing to maintain that stability and it be consistent. And health insurance was increasingly going up in costs, anywhere from 5 to 10% yearly. And I had to make the decision that we have to revamp this. We have to figure out a way that we can make sure our employees have good health insurance, but cut the costs. Our current health insurance, we were subsidizing 80% of the spousal coverage. And so we went back and said, we're going to cut that to 40%. By making that one change, it was reducing our costs close to $10 million. Now, that wasn't exactly very popular to our employees because we were subsidizing spousal coverage. However, when we met with the union, we shared with them, look at these other districts. We're one of 2 in the entire state that's still doing this. We explained why we needed to make this change. We had to ask the tough questions. Do you want raises or do you want to keep your health insurance costs at status quo? And if you keep it at status quo, it won't stay there very long because we're not going to be able to give you raises because all our money will be going to pay health insurance. And so it was a struggle. The board did have to impose it on them, but 2 years later, they are about to receive anywhere an average of over $5,000 and a pay increase because we passed a 1 mil to support our teachers being more competitively paid, that we will probably have the highest paid first-year teacher starting at close to $45,000. And we had to tell them this was purposeful. I couldn't get to here if we didn't do this. So at the time, it was very unpopular. And there were days that I was concerned I would be employed much longer to go through that. You're welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Greene. In light of the recent active shooter event in Parkland, Florida, and the legislature passing the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Safety Act, what would be your vision and strategy to address the short-term and long-term vulnerabilities identified in the district?
Well, I'm going to talk about what we have done and are doing in Manatee. On the day of the Parkland shooting, I called our sheriff as I'm watching it on television unfold and said, tomorrow I need a law enforcement officer in every single school. And every single municipality, law enforcement municipality, agreed. And the very next day, we had a law enforcement officer in every single school site. From that, within 10 days, we met with our municipalities. We looked at our financial budget, and from that point, we had an officer in every school, and we paid a little over $500,000 to ensure that we would have law enforcement officers in all of our schools till the end of the school year. That was the short-term concern. Long-term, we were working with our sheriff department and our other municipalities to put an SRO in every single school. Unfortunately, our county commission was not in agreement to share some of that cost. So we are going to do the same thing that you are doing here in Duval. We are going to go through the Guardian program. We will hire what we will call Guardian officers. Our sheriff department will train them, and we will ensure that at all of our elementary schools, we have a Guardian officer or a title similar to that. During that process, we went back and did an assessment of all of our facilities. We reviewed all of our law enforcement assessments for all of our facilities, and we now have created a priority list of facilities where we feel the gap is too great to not address that facility. The first thing we addressed was a buzzer system. We had started that process. 10 of our schools has the panic button and buzzer system, and so we rearranged our priorities and our funding, and so by the end of next year, all schools will have that system built into their front offices, so that either if they can't see the front door, there'll be a video monitor so that they can see who's coming in and be able to buzz them in. We, just like all the other districts, are writing our assessment plan so that we can apply for the dollars for hardening our schools. It is my understanding that Duval has already hired, or is in the process of hiring, a firm to evaluate all the facilities. This will become a major portion of that evaluation as well, to ensure, one, that all schools have what we would call a standard of care assessment, that this is a standard that every single school should be. And two, you already have your own police department, and you're coming up with the position security aides or assistants. Yes, school safety assistants, that is in place. I would, if I'm the superintendent of Duval, I would start having conversations with our other municipalities to see how can we start partnering in areas that maybe as the school district, we need their expertise to develop something that may be different than what we're doing currently. But for Manatee, we already have that relationship. And so the sheriff is guaranteeing the training of these individuals and guaranteeing they will continue to work with our council to try to get to the point where we have an SRO in every single school in my current school district.
We're about halfway through the question, or halfway out of time, so everything's good.
Okay, my question represents what teachers want to know about your leadership style. So some superintendents prefer teachers to follow provided lesson plans, curriculum guides, and timelines to ensure that all teachers across the county are on the same page, whereas other superintendents allow teachers to use the district-provided materials as a tool and allow more autonomy with lesson planning as long as the lessons are guided by the standards. So in your current position, what is your personal philosophy and leadership style with regard to how the provided curriculum is used? Do you prefer district-led timelines and curriculum guides, or do you allow standards-based lessons with autonomy that allows teachers to use the curriculum only as a tool?
I allow all of the above. We have district curriculum guides for our schools. Our teachers are the ones who make the decision on textbook adoption. So whatever the teachers decide that they're going to adopt, that's what we purchase for all of our schools. But teachers have the autonomy to develop their lessons the way they see fit. We use a product called Schoology. It's a learning management system. So all of our curriculum guides, all of our resources, they're all there in one location. And teachers can use that information to develop their lesson plans. I'm really not interested in saying everybody needs to be on the same page on the same day. What I'm interested in is ensuring that all of our students have access to high quality teaching that is in alignment with the Florida standards. What I am interested in is how are teachers meeting those students who aren't reaching those standards? What are teachers doing to support those students? How are they helping those students scaffold their learning until they do reach those standards? So the curriculum guides are just what they're called. They're a guide. I am a superintendent at the end of each at the end of the quarter. So the curriculum guide says this is what the guide of the standards that should be, and then at the end of the 9 weeks, I want to know, well, have the students mastered those standards? And if they're not mastering those standards, how do we support our schools and our teachers to ensure that students can get there? So I hope I've answered your question. I am not concerned about being on the same page. Resources are just that, resources. However, if I'm not getting the results, I am going to question, what resources are you using? Or what are you doing currently that we can change or support you in tweaking, or what are we going to do differently? Because the students need to be the center of the conversation. Wherever they are, we need to start where they are and figure out a way, how do I scaffold them to get to here? And at the same time, the students who are already here, how do I continue to provide instruction that keeps them engaged so that they now want to be here? So it's a very challenging time for teachers because your classes are not generally are not homogeneously grouped. You have a span. And the key is, how do we support you so that that higher performing student can be receiving a high quality education, and that lower performing student is also receiving a high quality education.
Dr. Greene, please describe your experience working with groups in an organization with varying interests and agendas. Describe how you were able to achieve consensus and a common vision for the organization with the different groups.
Wow. That generally is every day. I will use the example of the 1 mil. The consensus of the board was that we were going to move forward with a 1 mil. And I used the word consensus because if we go by vote, it was a 3-2 vote. So everyone really did not vote to move forward with the 1 mil, but they came to consensus that in the end they would support or not say anything about the 1 mil. To work with 5 board members who always have maybe different agendas because they have different constituents that they're trying to serve, I have to figure out how to support them and at the same time provide leadership to a group of people who are technically my boss. And so I do that by one-on-one meetings. I do it by trying to understand what is your desired outcome. I also do it by being agreeable to disagree on an issue. And during that process, I did have one board member that I fully knew did not support that going for this 1 mil. But I tried to always put them in a very positive light. I never said anything negative. And I believe that board member has an utmost respect for me, even though we truly were on opposite sides of this issue. And I try to be very inclusive. And I'm very candid and honest with them. I basically told that board member, this will hurt the school district if we do not go for this. We cannot compete with our surrounding districts anymore. They are paying upwards to $10,000 more than what we are paying our teachers. Their administrators are making $20,000 more than our administrators. We can't compete anymore. And I understand your reasons for not going for it, but this is not about politics. This is about us being competitive to have the very best teachers in our classrooms, and we can't even get into the game if we do not have this 1 mil referendum. So I like to think I have the ability to continue to work with someone that I may not agree on a number of the issues that we're working through. So the way I do it is I just treat them with respect and I deal with the issue at hand and continue to have a plan in place to meet the goals and objectives that have been set forth.
Superintendent, my question has to do with public presence, about being a public figure in communication. We wanted to hear about your most demanding public presence experience, what your role was in that, and the role of the board as well.
I don't know that I have a most demanding public presence experience. I think what's very demanding for me, and I'll just be open and honest, I'm an African-American female, and I'm a Christian. And many times I'm asked to speak on Sunday, on the weekends, and my presence is asked of me a lot. And for me, I'm working on finding that balance where I have to sometimes say, no, I'm sorry, I can't come speak. So I don't ever feel like there's something demanding of me about being in the public. I'm very comfortable speaking to large numbers of people about multiple topics, but it's now about how often I speak. And sometimes there are portions of the year that I just know I have to do this, such as this time of the year. We're getting ready for graduation. We have banquets all over the place. And you know, I just spoke at a church 2 weeks ago. So for me, it's about finding that balance and making sure that I don't put myself in a position where my public speaking is starting to impact my ability to be effective.
Okay, Dr. Greene, if you can give us an example where you were faced with an authentic crisis within an organization, what happened, your role in handling it, the results, and most importantly, the key things that you learned from that situation.
Well, I think if any of us were here this year, Hurricane Irma would be a very impactful event. Hurricane Irma was expected to be a direct hit to Manatee County. We opened up 24 shelters and served over 25,000 evacuees or shelterees in our schools. The situation became very intense when the storm actually was on the outer skirts of Manatee County, and our walkie-talkie, the whole walkie-talkie system went down. I am in a shelter. I am trying to communicate with the other 24 shelters, and Morse code wasn't an option. So we created this phone tag system. I was able to text. I had to put people in groups of text messaging and able to reach individuals to have this conversation, because we knew out of the 24 shelters, 10 of them lost electricity. So now I have thousands of people in our schools with no electricity. How am I making sure that our administrators are able to support and things aren't becoming chaotic? Let me backtrack a little bit. When we were preparing to open our schools up for shelters, I asked my principals, how many of you have actually been through a major hurricane and have been in a shelter more than, 1 day? Not a single hand went up. So the enormous knot in my throat started coming up, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm thinking, hey, I've been in Florida. I've been through 5 of them. None of you? So we did a quick refresher training for them, even though we've known they've been trained. And we made sure that every resource that they needed, we took a half day off from school. Before the hurricane came, we closed school so that we could visit every single site and ensure everything was in place for them. And then when the storm hit, we were able to communicate through this chain link of emails and text messages to ensure that, one, We were getting them flashlights, whatever they needed to make it through the night. And the next morning, when the hurricane had passed, every shelter was working. Every dog, cat, bird, snake, whatever animal we were sheltering, they were all in place. And we were able to move the district forward and start the cleanup process. What I learned is, one, our communication system is not adequate. We were using county radios to communicate between the county and our schools. We were already in the process of buying communication devices that were of a much higher quality, yet they had not arrived. So you better have plan B, C, D in case that goes down. Two, the character of my administrators was off the chart. These are people that know how to be principals, but I wasn't quite sure they were ready to be shelter managers, but they were. And I think part of that reason was I never left them. I was either in a shelter or talking to them by radio. I helped go to our homeless shelter. I was there for an entire day. So the fact that they saw me visible with them, helping them with things that I don't want to talk about, they knew that they were in good hands. They knew they weren't doing this alone. And that whole experience has brought my senior leadership team closer together. It's made us a stronger team in just now the normal day-to-day operations. So I believe that hurricane event truly transformed our school district. And I hate to keep going back to these referendums, but it's part of the reason why we passed that $1 million. The community just raved about what support they had being in our shelters. And, you know, they got 3 meals a day. We took care of them. We ended up opening up every shelter to pets. And it truly was an experience to be afraid of we're going to be a direct hit for a hurricane, and at the same time know that I can't be afraid because these people who are all looking at me, they're dependent on me to help them through. And you really learn how strong you are.
All right, my question is related to staff. How do you establish a team and mobilize team members to achieve goals? Give an example of a successful project resulting from teamwork.
Well, I think I just shared one, but I will share a different project. We are implementing a new business package, a new ERP system, and this system is a $20 million project. And we've had a number of starts and stops, a number of issues that have prevented the project moving forward. And it is so vitally important that superintendents understand that sometimes they cannot be the leader of every project. Sometimes you need to make sure that the person who is the leader of the project has the level of expertise and knowledge to ensure that that project can be successful. The superintendent cannot know every single thing of the inner workings of a school district and IT, with much of it being very technical. You truly need to ensure that you've hired people who have that level of expertise. We thought we had that level of expertise in the leader, and about a year in, figured out, no, we do not. So the key here is through the information and the checks, we were figuring out this person's not the right person. So now you have to have the courage to say, I got to go in a different direction. I have to fix this. I have to have the courage to tell each of my board members, I know we have this project set to be completed at this time, but it's not going to be completed. I have to make changes. I need to relocate this person or help this person find another position. and hire the right person. And that is what we did. We helped that person find employment outside our school district. We hired the right person. We gave that person the support of the team members that he said, these are the people I'm missing from my team. We supported him. That team has now done some phenomenal things, and we are slated to go live July 1 with our new ERP system. Teamwork requires that the leader has to step up and own things when they are not working. And when it's working well, the leader has to be willing to say, other people did it. That is the only way this ERP system is actually going to go live on July 1, is because I've stepped aside and allowed my CIO to be a true leader, to be the face of this ERP system, but support him in the background. Oh, Enterprise Resource Planning System. It's a business package. I think Duval is called SAP. Yes. Ours is called PeopleSoft, or will be called PeopleSoft.
We have high and low social economic students. How would you ensure that every student, regardless of social economic status, receive equal access and resources to ensure high achievement? Please give examples of use of facilities, curriculum design, and community input to achieve equal access.
In my school district, 25 of my schools are Title I schools. These are and all 25 are 100% free and reduced lunch, 100% poverty. Part of our grade level reading initiative that we went out into the community and said, okay, we can't do this by ourselves. We need your support. We developed a task force, or major partners task force, of the United Way, the school district, the community foundation, and our local university, USF Sarasota Manatee, to develop resources, initiatives that would support our 15 Title I elementary schools. These are our most impoverished schools. Probably 80% of the schools are of Hispanic descent, and the remaining 20% African American, or it's vice versa, 80% African American, 20% Hispanic. Today we have hundreds of senior citizens as volunteers through a program called Reading Pals. Reading Pals is run out of United Way. We pair them with kindergartners, and they 1 hour a week come in using a program that's called Footsteps to Brilliance. This is a digital curriculum for young learners. We chose it because it addresses all modalities. It has music. It has all the things that young children need to be exposed to, and we train these volunteers. They are in our schools, and our goal is to have every kindergartner have their own personal reading pals. We also partner with our Rotary Club called Books for Kids. They come into these same schools, and they're now partnering with our third grade students. Every time they come in 1 hour a week and they highlight a book, whatever that book is, every student gets a book to take home to keep. So through that program, the students receive 10 books because they come at least once a month. That is developing their personal library. Through this effort, we have brought our community in to provide the resources that the school district cannot. The school district, on the other hand, has looked at the facility needs of all of these schools and started identifying who's the first renovation school of these schools, these 15 Title I's, to ensure that those schools look as good as schools in our non-impoverished areas. The second thing we have done is we've invested more resources into those schools. We've revamped our Title I dollars in providing Title I pre-K ensuring that we have what we call graduation enhancement techs. These individuals' only job is to deal with chronic absenteeism. These individuals' only job is to work with guidance counselors, social workers to get resources for families that there's a roadblock preventing their child coming to school. These schools also have an additional 30 minutes of school, whether they're in the bottom 300 or not. It doesn't matter. We give them an additional time in their school day so that they can have a second hour of reading instruction. We use a very specialized curriculum for the students who are in that hour who are below grade level that we do not allow any other school to use. That curriculum is trained for teachers as well as paraprofessionals. Every single classroom in our middle school, we only have one, we provide a paraprofessional. We have provided more resources for these schools to close the gaps for students that are attending that school the gaps that are keeping them from being successful. The key is time. You can't change the curriculum. You can't change with the flavor of the month. You have to remain committed to it. You have to remain committed to providing those resources year in, year out. You have to remain committed to providing the professional development for the teachers. Those teachers are paid also differently at those schools. They receive incentive bonuses. They receive, they get paid at their daily rate to work 30 additional minutes. We provide different incentives for attendance for our teachers in those schools. So what we are doing is saying to level the playing field. If the playing field says the standard is here and these schools are here, our goal is to provide the resources to get them up to the same level as their non-Title I schools and peers. So we work very hard to ensure that our students have, and when we say equal access, we're saying they have access to opportunity. They have access to a high quality teacher. Last week, we just did movements with our teachers that under the state board rule of not having a VAM score, what we did for those teachers is we met with them and we gave them the first opportunity to choose where they would like to teach somewhere else instead of making it punitive. So now they can complete out their year. If everything turns out, they can have the option to stay at that school, but they already have their new school and grade level picked out and have already met with that possible new principal that they may be working with.
Thank you, Dr. Greene. This is the best question of the day. This is closing. So is there anything else you would like to share with us to support your candidacy?
Everything that I've done in my professional career, I believe, has led me to this point. And that I am not only qualified to be the superintendent for Duval County, I am prepared to be the superintendent for Duval County. And I would be remiss in not saying, and I would be your best superintendent for Duval County. This opportunity to come back full circle of where I started is very important to me. And if I am given that opportunity, then I am going to work just as hard as I work for my current school district or even harder to ensure that Duval County continues on that trajectory that they are headed on to be an A school district. And not only to be an A school district, but for us to be proud to be in Duval County. So thank you for the opportunity.
We are just over an hour, and I think here today, we had a good session. I think we'll just leave it right there. Right?
Thank you.
Have a great day. Thank you so much.